Hi Mats, could you please introduce yourself and Adyen?
Of course. I'm Mats Klein Breteler. I have a background as a financial regulatory lawyer and I'm now general counsel at Adyen, so responsible for all legal matters. And Adyen is a global payments company, at least by origin, and I would guess you could classify it as a fintech company as well. Original focus on payments and got its listing on the Amsterdam Euronext exchange back in 2018 and also obtained the European banking license about 5 years ago and a US one a couple of years ago.
First topic would be, in my view, market trends. I'm curious about market trends and what your view on these are.
Yeah, I would say the biggest trend we're seeing now is a move towards a platform economy. So where businesses, which are traditionally our customers, where they're selling their products or services, they're using more and more platforms to sell their products and services. So there can be platforms that are very well known and consumer facing as well. That would typically more of a marketplace model, but also to a large extent platforms behind the scenes. So think about a cash register system that also takes care of your accounting, that you can use to send invoices, that maybe also manages your web shop inventory, etc.
Yeah, so platforms in fact not only for clothes and for what we see online, but also for business to business platforms. I think that is also what you're referring to.
Yeah, correct. So providing a lot of the technology and tools that businesses need to more effectively run their business directly towards consumers.
Yes. And what about Adyen? So Adyen comes in, looks also to these, well, of course, to the marketplaces and the platforms we already know, but also to these new type of platforms. What are you offering?
Yeah, so traditionally we've already been offering through platforms and to platforms payment services. So that is getting money in from various sources, like your credit or debit card, could be online, could be local payment methods, could be global ones, getting that in and grouping it together and leveraging our new licenses. We're also expanding that with financial services now. So think about adding a debit card that you can use to spend the funds that you receive, or tagging a bank account on top of that. So you can not just spend it with a card, but it can also transfer to your suppliers or your employees if you need to pay them. Or even capital, which could be, I don't know, you're running a donut shop, your coffee machine breaks down, you need to buy a new one, but it's really expensive and you don't happen to have that cash right now. Through that same platform that you're integrated into already, we could make capital available instantly on that bank account or on that card that you have already. So that when you're at the store for a new coffee machine, you can actually, through that platform interface, see if you're pre-qualified for a certain amount of capital, get that immediately and use that immediately to buy that coffee machine, take it home with you and start selling coffee again the same day.
Mats, thank you very much. I'm now talking about the platform. What I also see in the market, not only as a lawyer but also as a consumer, is various new banking services or payment services being introduced. One big thing in Germany is really the buy now, pay later solution, which is offered by various entities, and it's really pushing into the area of classic credit card providers. Is that something you see overall in your business as well, when you look at the market, that there's an increased demand for buy now, pay later solutions?
Yeah, I think you can see this generally, and there's quite a lot of new providers also popping up or existing providers expanding to new markets. You do see that the growth varies a bit per market, and I guess that also depends on the alternatives that are available already and to what extent it is easy to get credit or usual to get credit and the market perception of that. So it differs a bit per country, but it's definitely a theme over the past few years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will it replace credit card, you think?
I don't think it will entirely replace credit cards. It's quite a different product. It's more a one-off purchase based, and it's a different checkout flow. So I really think it relates to market perception and what consumers are used to, as well as how easy it is to get a credit card, because of course that's quite a traditional banking product, and it's not easy for everyone or in every market to get the credit line that you need to get a credit card. And with buy now, pay laters, you see that it's at least in a lot of countries, a lot more unregulated territory, and that a lot of parties are jumping into that to to offer this to more consumers that may not be able to get credit.
Yeah, because you see it being offered by merchants, but you see it also offered being directly to consumers, which I think is new, and that is comparable to the credit card. So what about harmonization? If I think about harmonization on an EU level, we already have a lot of differences in what legislators and in particular regulators think of the EU rules. I no doubt in Germany you have these issues.
Indeed we have. I mean, the main problem is even in a harmonized environment like CRD4 or PSD2, there are so many things which need to be construed by national regulators, starting with the definitions, of course. Classical example is always the group exemption in the PSD2, which is traditionally by BaFin construed very, very narrowly to only include payments as within the group. So as soon as there is an outside entity involved, the group exemption is off the table. And that, of course, raises issues with payment factories and things like that, which might be construed differently in other countries. I don't know, Mats, if you came across this issue or experienced similar types of.
Yeah, and I think the group exemption is definitely one I know from Germany because our customers are dealing with it quite regularly, and of course we're doing what we can to help them out. But it's definitely a theme that we see across Europe, where definitions are being interpreted differently. So the legal framework is technically harmonized and the same, but because a definition is interpreted differently, you fall within a different bucket, and as a result you need to apply a whole different legal and compliance analysis to your product.
And it might also create business opportunities for you, right? Because in the end, what we see, large group companies like Siemens, Daimler, you name it, yeah, they used to have their own payment factory, and now they're of course looking to external service providers who are adequately licensed to take over with these services, right? Because they cannot benefit anymore from the group exemption.
Yeah, no, it's exactly, and this is a typical example of what we always say, complexity, it provides opportunities for us.
Yes.
And we have the luxury that we are in the most heavy regulated framework already that you can be in Europe. So we're definitely trying to leverage that where we best can to help our customers.
Yeah, it's very good that you see now that also the EU and the Commission sees these difficulties, that they are talking now about a move from PSD2 to 3, where they will tackle issues like definitions, payment, what is a payment account, and so on. Because now, of course, with the services you're providing on a global basis, banking services, you not only have to deal with the EU, but also with the UK, with the US. Could you talk a bit how you do that?
Yeah, I mean, the UK is of course an interesting one because its rules are still heavily based on the European framework. And at the same time, you do see that they're moving towards finding their own stance in things. And to a certain extent, they have their own stance in things already. Like the donut shop owner example I mentioned, if that owner wouldn't have an incorporated entity, if it would be a sole prop, we call them, sole proprietorship, then it would be considered a consumer in the UK, which means, again, you're into a whole different bucket of regulations.
Yeah, well, you need to comply with all the consumer rules, of course. Yeah. And what about the US?
Yeah, so for the US, it's a different ballgame altogether because it's not just the interpretation of definitions that is different. The whole banking framework is, of course, not the same as the EU. So the definitions in the first place are different. So where in the EU we have the concept of bank account as one of the, or taking deposits as it's called in CRD4 terms, of course. But that concept in the US is not one concept. There's 8, if not more, different types of accounts, each carrying their own framework. Yeah. And it's the challenge of fitting all these different frameworks into hopefully a global single product.
Yeah, because what you want to offer your clients, of course, who work on an international basis, is one product everywhere, all over the world. Yeah. That is your challenge.
Exactly. Yeah, keeping it as simple as possible for our customers, but that does mean we take the complexity upon ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much for this explanation and for having you here.
Thank you, Mats.
Thank you.
Thanks.